Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the House of Footy podcast. I'm Jack Hudson, and joining me, as always, is AFL legend Warren Tredrea. Treaders, how you going, mate?
I hope you're prepared, Hutto.
Oh, yes, we're
It's
here.
round one, mate. You got to be ready to go.
Round one, round zero. What are they calling it? Opening round, round everything. But yeah, we're finally here. I'm
Yep.
excited. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going really well, mate. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, the preseason's always good to get a bit of a look at things, but let's face it, it's preparation, isn't it? So here we go, round one. Game start tonight, and see where we go and see where our teams measure up over what is probably a 7 month journey to try and get there in the end.
Yeah, it's exciting, and I like the games that they are this weekend. Like Sydney playing Melbourne tonight. Obviously, it's got Gawn v Grundy all over it. Brisbane v Carlton match, prelim final rematches, and then Dimmer up against his old side. Like it's just good storylines, really.
Yeah, and then you look at GWS and Collingwood too. Like
Mm.
arguably, GWS probably have every right to think they could have won the flag last year when they lose to Collingwood by a kick. Collingwood win by a kick. It's that close, and it's all on execution. So, yeah, they'll be ripping games. I'll certainly be plonking my bum on the couch watching those games of footy over the next couple of days.
Absolutely, but let's get into it. Obviously, the biggest story of the week was Jimmy Webster. Got his whack from the tribunal. 7 match suspension for this.
Well, let's face it, no one's surprised. We were just waiting
No.
for the number, weren't we?
Mm.
When you look at what Sam Pepper got last week, after the retirement of Brayshaw, you go four. Probably thought that was a little overs, but it's the new world we're living in. Now Webster decides to leave the ground, bump at Simpkin, couldn't protect himself, head high hit. I think he's probably lucky to say, hey, 7 weeks is probably be about right. It is long, and everyone goes, oh, that's comparison to when Staker got hit by Barry Hall. There's a different world back then. That's almost 20 years ago. So the reality of this situation is you choose to bump, you're in strife. He did it. He's probably lucky that the AFL didn't charge him with intentional. They went with careless. It was careless, high, and it was severe. High contact, severe force. So yeah, really, I thought he had every chance to be pinged with intentional, but the AFL probably downgraded it slightly.
Yeah, well, they asked for 8 matches initially. I think St Kilda wanted 4, which was just not going to happen. So then the tribunal settled on 7, which I feel was the right decision.
Yeah, it was almost like they were trying to negotiate with a house. Someone wants 900, someone wants to pay 800, and then they go, "We'll meet you halfway in 850 in the middle, isn't it?"
Yeah,
But I just think with the intentional thing, I guess that was going to be a legal challenge by the AFL's QC that charges effectively the player and Webster, but he's going to have to prove it's absolutely intentional that he went to that contest wanting to knock him out. Well, that's probably going to be difficult to do, but
mm,
there was some evidence to suggest that probably they could argue that because you go, well, he's chosen to bump. He doesn't put his arms out to smother. He doesn't put his arms out to corral or to make physical contact to bump. And then when he leaves the ground with such intensity, he drops his shoulder and does it. But in the end, let's face it, he's going to miss, you know, a third of the season uh,
yeah.
from get to go. And you look at what he's going to have to do from a preparation point of view. I know that it fits the crime, but the reality is he won't be able to play any official scratch matches. He'll have to do his own game situations in training, then topping up all the time. Those 7 weeks are going to be, and every day the team is playing, he's going to have to do another physical game like match because he's also banned at the lower level. So he can't go and play in the VFL team. So he's going to realise what this 7 weeks looks like, and it ain't fun. He's got 7 weeks more of pre-season, and the worst carrot is everyone else around him is showing him exactly what he's missing out on for that whole time. Going off to games, flying, playing, winning, and all he's going to be sitting there doing is probably packing Powerade and hoping he's got a job to do because he's going to be bored shitless other than getting flogged in preparation.
Have you seen the fixture? Is that what the fixture is when he returns?
Yeah, I get a feeling that it might be a rematch with North Melbourne.
You're correct. How crazy is that?
Well, can you assume that there's method to the AFL's madness? I don't think anyone does, but yeah. Well, what we've got is bumper games. We have rivalries. We used to have rivalry round.
Mm.
We have two showdowns. We have two Carlton Collingwoods, all the big games, two derbies, Q clashes. The Battle of the Bridge, and now we've got double up St Kilda versus North Melbourne.
Well, it's quite funny because the game between the two last year was quoted on social media as a crime against sport because it was one of the worst games of football ever seen. Low scoring, gross, and not all low scoring games are bad, but this was particularly bad. So interesting times. But we'll stick with the concussion, and the protocols are tightening, especially at country level, community level, Treaders. 21 days that players will have to miss to recover from concussion, and I can only imagine that might not be too far away from AFL level.
Yeah, well, the only reason the AFL stuck with the 12-day concussion protocol and then effectively forced everyone else below to go to 21 days is they're saying that the medical opportunities and the medical services that are offered to AFL players and AFLW players are miles better than everyone else. Well, that's true. Like
Yeah.
local footy clubs don't even have a doctor, and if they do, it's one of the parents of one of the kids playing. So I think this is good for sport. As long as it's hard and fast rule, you don't want people manipulating this. And my understanding too, Hutto, with this, and you may have heard differently, is this includes the VFL and VFLW, but
Yes.
we're not sure yet on the waffle and the sample. They're going to be encouraged. That's the word. You know, at the end of the day, is the AFL fund a lot of money to the second tier comps, the sample and the waffle for grassroots footy and promotion of and getting Oz kickers and the like. I'd suspect that they'll adopt those protocols pretty quickly, only because it's for the players' welfare. And as we've proven with the Brayshaw situation and the 2 suspensions since, the AFL's serious about this. And if you don't adopt this, it just looks like you're not being serious enough.
Yeah, from a game perspective, though, and I'm not entirely sure on this, and this is probably just throwing it up there. 21 days for VFL level. So if an AFL listed player gets belted at VFL level, is he under the 12-day protocol? Is he under the 21-day protocol?
Well, I would assume if he's an AFL listed player, he'd probably sit
Yeah,
under the AFL's protocol.
it makes
I,
sense.
I, I would assume that. But then
Yeah.
again, the contrary argument immediately comes into my own head as I've said that. Well, he's representing in the sample. Like if you play in the sample South Australian National Footy League, you've got to play by the last touch rule, don't you? Because you've got to
Yep.
adopt to their processes. But I would suspect that, there'll be some sort of setup anyway. And my understanding, when I did a little bit of help with Jacob Surgeon, a former teammate of mine, back from Port playing days, last year, one sort of every fortnight with North Adelaide, and there were players that were set on protocols as an app that they have to use. There's a certain return to protocol. There was a 3-level return to protocol. So you have to have no symptoms in any of those levels to then be able to return to play. So they don't mess around even at the second tier comp. So I think it's a good sign for kids playing sport and growing up in this system. So we don't want to see the situations where at a young age you might have had 6 concussions, no one really knows what's going on, and then you get into an AFL system and you have 3 or 4 and you're not right. We don't want to see that at any stage.
No, but we've seen some more rule changes to junior footy. So team numbers, so they're reduced in junior age groups to ensure everyone gets a go. So they'll progressively increase through age groups. So that's
good. That's what we want.
Standard.
Because let's face it, a lot of people don't take up playing footy or basketball or netball or soccer because they want to be a superstar at the top level. They do it because their mates play.
Yeah.
So the more opportunity and the more people we can keep involved, I think it's better.
Yep. Ground sizes and zones. So recommended ground size suitable for the number of players for each particular age group. So it's to ensure players are never far from the ball and maximise available space. So that means multiple games can occur on an oval at the same time.
Well, that's smart. For the last 2 years, my son's played under 14s this year, so it's back to under 12s, under 13s a few years ago. They're playing on the full oval at Henley, local footy club.
Jeez.
That's what their A grade plays on. So, and when they're a dominant team, the ball's pinned down there, or it's a windy day, or it's muddy, the ball never gets back and you don't score. You know what I mean? So I think you want to promote scoring at a young age, and I think you also want to promote the ability for, that ground size I think is really important, because otherwise it's just lopsided. No one really gets much out of it. And, if it's a cold, wintry, wet day, you got some kids who wants to wear track pants at full forward because the ball doesn't even get down there.
Yep, that good vibe. Very true. Progressive introduction to tackling. So obviously this would be linked to the protocol stuff, and right rules for the right skill level. So contact is gradually introduced to help kids learn and develop as they progress. So obviously it's going to be quite different to what you or even I grew up with being told. We were told to smash the head, basically hurt them, make them feel. Well, basically tackle them, make them feel, make them pulled their
Yeah,
face.
you
So
tackled a hurt. You're never told to take their head off, though.
not take their head off, but you know what I mean. In terms of tackle to make them hurt. So
Well, that's no
I'm northern
different. There's no,
suburbs.
but it's no different now, mate. It's
Yeah,
still tackle to hurt, but
yeah,
just don't pole drive them into the ground
yeah,
or sling them into the ground.
yeah.
Tackle to hurt. The hurt is the impact you actually make. The whack getting hit by a tackle,
Mm,
not the second moment of when you've actually got them at your beck and call, and then people do the cheap shot and ram them into the ground. That's what I
yeah.
don't like. But I think the also thing they need to look at, which hasn't been listed, and I know you got one more point to get to,
Hmm.
is actually how you attack a contest.
Yeah.
Because you talk about the tackler, right? Progressive introduction to tackling.
Mm,
It also, the onus is too on the person winning the football. When I was taught as a kid and there was a ball between you and your mate, shoulder to shoulder, you get your leg in front on the other side of the ball. You use your shoulder and your bum and your ass. You're wide, right? Unless you
yeah.
just use your shoulder, you're 10 centimeters wide. But if you get your width, you can spread sort of 3/4 of a meter over the ball.
Mm,
What we have been taught, unfortunately, and what has creeped into the game since the Byron Pickett Begley hit many years ago, back in 05 or 06, was that people who lead with their head, they'll get a free kick.
yeah.
I think that's contributing bigger than anything in the sport. I get the tackling's the issue, but when you've got players leading with their head through a contest, that's asking to become a paraplegic.
Hmm.
Because that if anything in any sport, boxers don't just lead with their head; they put their hands in front of their head. They don't want to get hit in the head.
No.
This is the bit that, for me, was rewarded for far too long, and we're probably going on 15, nearly 20 years now, where, oh yeah, he made contact with the head. Yeah, because the bloke who grabs the ball drives through with his head. He doesn't come in, pick the ball up. You can run straight, but pick the ball up sideways. So you're using your body to protect. Whereas a lot of blokes come through like this, of course you're going to get a free kick. So I think
Mm,
fundamentally that needs to be taught too. Get side, get lower. Because if you're coming up high and you're using your head, you're going to get cleaned up because then you're asking for perfect tackle technique. And I don't think the AFL wants that because you go, oh, yeah, well, you got him high, that's a free kick. No, but what happens if the bloke actually carrying the footy can stay low, be harder to tackle, push through the contest? They're more likely to, one, not get injured, but get free and get their hands free to keep the ball going. So I think that's something they need to consider as well.
yeah. No, I completely agree with that. That's similar to what I was taught as well. To you will get a free kick if you get belted in the head. So,
Yeah.
but I guess that's just lack of understanding. But this is an interesting one. No scoring in the lowest age groups as well. So no scoreboards, no ladders and finals. They're all introduced at older age groups.
Yeah. Yeah. And that'd probably start at what, around 13, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's funny with this?
Mm-hmm.
Why bother? You know why? I coached
Mm-hmm.
my son's team at Fulham North a few years ago.
Yep.
They knew it was 28 goals something versus, oh, they didn't score or someone didn't. Everyone knows. The kids know.
Someone's counting.
Mate, they know how many kicks they had. They know how many
Yeah.
goals they've kicked, right?
Yeah.
And then even when the team manager's talking and has missed a couple, they go, who kicked a goal that quarter? They all put their hands up.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's a bit. But well, the bad thing about the world, we want to
Mm-hmm.
shelter people. Yep, and I get that. Give everyone a go, all that. But when it's scoreboard, do
Just
you really? Who knows? Everyone knows who's dominating. The parents and the kids playing know who's dominating. The only
mm,
people who don't know is when they rock up to the game and they're playing next. We don't
yeah.
want to shelter people from being good and not good at things.
No.
That's actually life.
Mm,
Some things you're great at, Hado, I ain't good at, and vice versa. Right?
yeah.
So just because you turn 18, that shouldn't be new to you. The
No.
reality is in life, that's what we face every day.
Mm,
Some people are better than us, and we need to deal with that. And if we don't like that, we've got to do something about it and try and improve.
yeah. And I
The
played junior.
whole world measuring stick is better than the rest, or
Yeah.
not. And that's sad, but that's a reality.
Yeah.
You look at animals on the bloody African plains, mate. The strong survive and the weak see you later. That's
Yeah.
no different as sport. Just because we're sitting there going, oh, no, it's scoring age. Oh, that'll make Johnny feel better about himself. No, they love playing footy anyway. They don't
Mm,
care.
yeah. You're out there to have a kick with your mate, as you just said before. But
Yeah.
I played junior footy, like, I think under 12s. We got smacked every week. But you know what? I was enjoying getting the kick.
Mate,
I
and
was
then
enjoying
some
rugby.
kids don't give a stuff about the kick. As
Mm,
long as they get a pie and a hot dog or a sausage roll and a bucket of chips, that's the footy experience.
yeah. So yeah, I don't like it too much. The local league here removed percentages and for and against from ladders not too long ago. They didn't print them. And it was ridiculous. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, keeping with the AFL issues, Riley Thilthorpe out for about 3 months with his knee injury. Yeah, not great for Adelaide.
No, none of these injuries are great, particularly when this kid's what, 3 years into the system, I think,
Yep,
maybe
yep.
four. I reckon he was the Horn Francis draft, or no, a year before
No,
maybe.
year before. Yep.
Year before. But he's a talent. He's a big unit, 200 centimetres plus. Kicked five in a showdown last year and terrorised Port Adelaide. But he was still that little bit inconsistent. He's been really good in the preseason, but he hobbled off in Adelaide's last hit out against West Coast, played at Richmond Oval, where the Westies playing the Sandful. And the worry was you need a scope. All the media coverage over here was, oh, how long you're going to be out, rah, rah, rah. Worst case scenario, probably around 12 weeks. If not, quick scope, 3 or 4 weeks, I'll be back. Sadly for him, for Crows supporters, he damaged the meniscus, which is the cartilage in the knee, but it needed to be restapled back on to the knee. And they do that with younger type players. Some of the older blokes, they just rip it out and say you'll be right in a month. Deal with the swelling for the rest of your life. But
Oh,
this is
jeez.
an operation they had pretty good success with too. So right move by Adelaide to push it long term, but being out for 3 months is not ideal for him. It'll drive him nuts, but it'll probably make him hungry to come back. But then the next question is who comes in? I really like Gallant as a forward, lead up
Yep.
forward. I think he's got some tricks. I've watched him in the Sandful a fair bit. Burgess is the guy they got from Gold Coast in the trade period last year. He's an option. Himmelberg's the one in previous years you go here to be a straight replace, because what Riley Philthorpe does do is gives O'Brien a chop out in the ruck for 5 or so minutes a quarter.
Hmm.
Um, they're going to need someone to help Riley O'Brien because he does do a big amount of rucking. You look at the other forwards, Taylor Walker, no, there's no way you're going
No.
to put Fogarty in there. So do they actually go pinch hit ruckman, maybe play an extra mid, similar to the Sean Grigg mould from many years ago with
Oh,
Richmond, who is not a ruckman, but they
no.
play the extra midfielder, or do they, yeah, and they play a Gallant, or do they sit there and go look at Himmelberg, who's trained all summer as a defender, but he's done that in the past. So I suspect that Himmelberg might be the guy,
Hmm.
but it's not going to be a set it, let it set and see. It's going to be week to week proposition because if they're struggling to score, Gallant would pitch nicely in between what Adelaide does forward to centre. Their issue's not scoring, their issue's defence. So
Hmm.
they might need someone a bit more bash and crash in the ruck because they last year historically Adelaide conceded a lot. That's what cost them. It wasn't their scoring. I think they were almost number one in the comp for scoring. So that'll be a question for the Adelaide coaching staff and Matthew Nicks, but I would suspect right now you go is probably Himmelberg.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you because, yeah, does probably one of the worst sort of injuries that get us, like Crows wise, in terms of structure, like your ruck forward.
Yeah. And talk about upside too. His
Hmm.
preseason was looking good. He's a number two draft pick. He's a potential, and I say potential. He's got the weapons, super runner, reads the play, desperate to get better, but it hasn't popped yet. He's put on a lot more weight this year. He's starting to use his body. He's he's a power forward who could be their best player inside 2 or 3 years
Yeah, exactly.
if everything
Uh,
goes well.
This came out early this week. The AFL, the financial handouts that they pass on to each club. So they handed clubs a total of $393 million in funding for the 2023 season. So varying amounts are explained by prize money, travel subsidies, membership-related distributions, all that sort of stuff. Interesting to see just the difference in split between top and the bottom, Trees.
Yeah, well, at the bottom, it's Gold Coast. Well, you say at the bottom for revenue, so they get the most at 33.114 million, GWS 32.4, Brisbane 27.72, St Kilda 24, North Melbourne 24, Bulldogs 22, Sydney 22. I found surprising.
Mm,
Port 21, Melbourne 21, Collingwood 20.
yep.
Interesting. Then it's Carlton 19, Essendon 18, Adelaide 18, Geelong 18, Fremantle 18, Hawthorn 17, Richmond 16, and West Coast 15.
Yeah.
West Coast, richest team in the land, I assume, by the look of that. We know that when COVID hit, I think they had $60 million in the bank, or 40, or whatever the quote was. No, more than the game itself. They print money. And the other thing, too, is they get a clean stadium over there. So they get all the revenue from all the beer rights, the merchandising, advertising, food and bev, the whole lot. So they've got the best stadium deal in the comp, both West Coast and Fremantle. Then you look, and exposure wise, you probably argue against that to say, well, because they've got so much money, they don't get that exposure on the Friday night, Thursday night games as much because of the time difference. And the reasons why you look at who gets the most are most of those teams, they're not blockbuster teams in terms of big revenue based businesses and then also pulling crowds. Brisbane's pretty good. They're playing great footy, right? But Gold Coast and GWS are clearly on the AFL's financial packages and
Yeah.
free food vouchers only because they're growing their business. GWS great on the field. Gold Coast haven't even got it together on the field playing finals yet. Brisbane really good, but and St Kilda's had huge debt. North Melbourne's had their challenges. Western Bulldogs. These teams aren't your Broadway teams, and I get that. Sydney do get it, but not a huge amount. But if you look at the other end, it's the Richmonds, the Hawthorns, Geelong, a little bit of Adelaide, Collingwood, Carlton. I did find it interesting that Collingwood get more distribution than Adelaide by about 2 million, but there is method to the madness for the AFL, I assume. It's very much to the secret herbs and recipes,
Yeah.
very much that I don't give up. But if you look at who dominates Thursday and Friday night, right, then that generally tells you, and who has a better stadium deals, that tells you why certain teams get it at the bottom end. And particularly, too, a lot of it comes to with your performance. St Kilda, North Melbourne have slipped away. Bulldogs were disappointing. Those things were very, very different. I am surprised, however, Fremantle, their stadium deal's so good, but their performances haven't been good of late. So it's very much just a distribution of dollars that obviously the AFL has to do. Everyone looks at it and goes, oh, handouts, all this. No, the reality is it's not an equal business. It would only be equal if everyone had the same stadium deals, right? And the same, you play each other twice, and you could somehow manipulate it where good teams get Thursdays, Fridays, everyone gets the same exposure to primetime games. That doesn't happen. It's always the interstate teams, the second team on Saturday night, the later game on the Sunday afternoon, or the lower ranked Victorian teams. And that explains exactly why it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like we see someone like Hawthorn sitting in the Sunday twilight spot now because they're not as good.
Yeah.
But during
Yeah,
their
but when
peak
they
era,
won played in 4 grand finals in a row and won 3 of them, they were your Saturday night, worst case scenario, Friday night blockbusters all the time because you want to watch the best games. And we talked about it before. We've already got Brodie Grundy, Sydney, who we did really well in the off-season, taking on Melbourne, who'd been disappointing, but up against his old team. GWS versus Collingwood in Sydney, Brisbane playing. These games already look sexy when you talk about the 0 round. And why we didn't call it round 1, I just don't really know.
No one knows. This is an interesting point as well, this last one. So today, Razor Ray has been given permission to throw the ball up to help with a nagging back issue. To me, this screams this is the beginning of the death of the bounce. And seeing how many were bundled up last season and even more in the preseason, I'm not unhappy about it.
Yeah, I think the bounce looks great when it comes off. Nothing worse than you start a game and, we recall it. Yeah, you recall it. I remember every pre-game you go out in the Oval and Brendan Laterby with the umpires trying to do it. He could bounce them pretty well.
Not really.
Yeah. But this is smart. Chamberlain's obviously given permission to throw the ball up to help with he had missed the finals last year because of 2 bulging discs in his back. He's a good umpire. He's a really good bloke. He's probably he suffers off the back of, he's really animated. That's him. BT decided to brand him Razor Ray, so then it's given him a advanced hair gig, so he's not really struggling too much. But we want to see the best umpire still umpiring the game.
Yeah.
And when he's umpired 375 games, couple of grand finals, been a good fella, a good umpire, a good ambassador for umpiring, we don't want him to lose the game because of this bounce. And I agree. They're going to, but the AFL is going to continue with this bounce forever because once it goes, it'll never come back. I don't think people would be disappointed. I know it does help certain ruckmen in ruckcraft because if you're at centre bounce and that's not your strength, the bounce being slightly off helps probably the less vertical ruckman jumping ruckman. So I like that element of it, but the other bit is if it goes, I don't think we lose too much. And this is just common sense without admitting that it's really a waste of time to bounce.
the one sort of thing that you can keep it in a way, I feel like start each quarter with it, and that's it. Or start the
Yeah,
game with it.
that
Like,
that could work, but then what are we doing it for?
just,
The,
yeah, the pure
the look.
nostalgic hit. Yeah.
And if they
But,
balls it up, what are we going to do? Bloody throw it up, you idiot. That's
yeah.
exactly what happened. So the positive here is we're not losing nearly a 20-year umpire
Mm,
because he can't bounce it. And the other bit too, if you talk about workplace and insurance and looking after people,
mm,
he wants to keep working and you're going to put his back under more pressure. You're probably a bit more liable, like the concussion stuff. So I think
yeah.
common sense has prevailed. And I think if this is the case and there's someone struggling, but they're a really good umpire, why wouldn't the AFL promote that person to say, you be a great umpire, you throw it up. I'm just
Mm,
no good at it. It's no different to footballers, mate.
yeah.
My old teammate, Stewie Jew, could kick a torpedo and he kick him inside and out. And everyone's like, what happened here? Right?
Mm,
Not everyone can do that. Not
no.
everyone can do the Eddie Betts kick. Not anyone can swing on the left foot and nail it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So let people play to their strengths. Not all umpires are able to bounce well.
Yeah.
Why put them under that stress and that extra angst and pressure of their performance and think they might be dropped because they can't bounce? No. First and foremost, their job is to adjudicate the rules.
Yeah.
We never have a problem with the umpiring in the finals. Why? Because the best ones are available. Let's not exit them out of the game because they can't bounce the ball. And I'm not talking about Ray Chabel. I'm talking about all the others over the journey. We've
Mm,
lost a lot of good umpires off the back of they can't bounce a ball. It's not their job. It's
yeah.
one small element of their job.
Mm. They got enough shit to deal with.
Yeah.
Let's be real. Well, that's it from us this week. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the opening round. We are officially back, and then round one next week, which is confusing to say. So, Traders, see you next week.
See you then.